welcome to How to Fix It. I'm a little late to the Star Wars party, but hey, the theme month got in the way, and it was either do the 150th Literary Lair episode or do a Star Wars video, and the Literary Lair episode won out. The Last Jedi hit theaters last month, and the reaction was decidedly mixed. Personally, I loved it. I think it's the best Star Wars movie since Empire. It even trumped Force Awakens for me. Some fans enjoyed it, while others... yeah. Anyway, it got me nostalgic for Star Wars and made me realize that we looked at The Phantom Menace nearly 3 whole years ago, and never returned to talk about any of the other movies, though we've covered the holiday special here and the first expanded universe book on the Literary Lair since then. In case you're new, I am a huge Star Wars fan. Not quite as big a fan as I am of Star Trek or Doctor Who, though I was a Star Wars fan first, but still, huge fan. And as a fan, I can tell you that all these people angry about The Last Jedi, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They've never petitioned to take a movie out of canon before, to my knowledge, and really, we're cutting out porgs and not getting rid of now this is pod racing. But this isn't a video about The Last Jedi, because that's a good Star Wars movie. We're here to talk about a bad Star Wars movie, and yeah, this one is bad. The Phantom Menace was bad, but this is somehow worse. And unlike The Phantom Menace, this is one that I wasn't quite as attached to as a kid. I still liked it, don't get me wrong, but it was never one that I went back and rewatched all that much. Anyway, the more I keep talking, the more I'm going to talk about The Last Jedi, so let's cut this prologue short and get right into the movie. This is Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. The film centers around Anakin Skywalker, now played by Hayden Christensen, a decade after the events of the first movie, who, along with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan McGregor, being tasked with protecting Senator Padme Amidala, Natalie Portman, from assassination attempts. See, there's a separatist movement going on, led by Count Scaramanga, Dooku, and Padme wants to vote on a motion in the Senate that would authorize them to create an army to aid the Jedi in repelling the threat, and she's a major proponent of it, so she's being targeted. During the night, the assassin, Zam Wesell, who is being sent by a mysterious Mandalorian bounty hunter to kill Padme, is chased down by Anakin and Obi-Wan, but she's killed before she can reveal her employer. Anakin is sent by the Jedi Council to transport Padme back to Naboo and keep her safe, all the while both Obi-Wan and the Council don't completely trust him despite him having a decade of training, while Obi-Wan tries to track down Wesell's employer, discovering a planet that's seemingly been erased from the Jedi archives, Kamino. He goes there and finds that a decade prior they were asked by a Jedi Master, Sifo Dyas, who according to Obi-Wan went missing prior to that, to create an army of clones. I knew it was a mistake to give Marvel the Star Wars license. They turn everything into a clone saga. Obi-Wan discovers that the progenitor of the clones, their genetic base, Jango Fett, is Wesell's employer and the one who wanted Padme dead. He tries to chase him down, but Jango and his son Boba fight back. Obi-Wan manages to get away, but puts a tracker on them to follow them to their next destination, Geonosis. Meanwhile, Anakin and Padme start getting more and more friendly, which is against the Jedi Code since they can't have attachments or some BS like that. It's stupid. He also starts having nightmares about his mother dying, and so Padme agrees to go with him to Tatooine to track her down and ensure that she's safe. Upon arriving there, he finds that Watto, now looking even more like a racist stereotype, sold his mother to a moisture farmer, Cliegg Lars, and meets his stepbrother Owen and his girlfriend Beru, and C-3PO, now with silver plating. Cliegg tells him that Shmi was kidnapped by Tusken Raiders a month earlier, and Anakin goes out to bring her home, despite Cliegg saying that she's probably dead. He finds her, but she dies in his arms, and in a rage, he massacres the entire camp, killing all of them, women and children included, something sensed by both the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn and Yoda. Obi-Wan goes down to Geonosis and is captured as he discovers Dooku and Newt Gunray meeting in a battle droid factory. He was able to send a distress call to Anakin and the Council, and while the Council tells him to stay put, Padme demands that he go after Obi-Wan. They, along with R2 and 3PO, head off to Geonosis and sneak into the factory, with some comedy with 3PO getting his head placed on a battle droid body, while Dooku tells Obi-Wan that he has no idea what's going on with a bounty hunter. It's not often that a villain doesn't immediately reveal their evil plan right off the bat. Good for this movie. Anakin and Padme are captured, and the Senate, after it was proposed by Jar Jar, who took over for Padme in the Senate, vote to give Chancellor Palpatine emergency powers to immediately decide to use the clone army. There's a huge and actually really impressive Jedi battle in the arena on Geonosis, where Mace Windu decapitates Jango Fett right in front of Boba. Yoda shows up during the battle with the clones, and that's enough to turn the tides, and they manage to escape, with Obi-Wan and Anakin chasing after Dooku and getting into a lightsaber battle with him, with Anakin's hand being chopped off because that's what they did in Empire, and Obi-Wan being tossed aside. Yoda shows up to fight his former Padawan, though it ends with Yoda being forced to choose between saving Anakin and Obi-Wan or defeating Dooku, and he chooses the former, allowing Dooku to escape with the Death Star plans, which he delivers to Darth Sidious, which is only a slightly less stupid name than Sheev when you think about it. The Jedi watch as the Clone Wars begin, something they didn't want, and Anakin has a secret wedding on Naboo to Padme with R2 and 3PO watching as the movie ends. So right off the bat, and because it's literally the first thing you experience in any Star Wars movie, the music is top-notch. It's John Williams. That was the one thing I neglected to mention in the Phantom Menace review, but I felt it went without saying. I've never seen a Star Wars movie that I didn't absolutely love the score for, and this one is no exception. It's one of the things that makes the movie worth it to sit through, because it's such a great auditory experience. Though not everything we hear is as awesome. I'll get into that later. I also think it was a really good idea to do the 10-year time skip between movies. It worked for Star Trek and it worked for Star Wars. As much as I wanted to see Anakin's training, that's something best left to the expanded universe. Even if it's not canon, the Jedi Quest series was still really good and one of my favorite book series as a kid. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the time skip was ultimately a good idea since bringing us closer to the original trilogy and farther from the Phantom Menace meant that they had greater leeway to figure out what to keep and what to jettison from the movie that was present in the last one. And the basic premise of the Sifo Dyas plotline, with the clones having been organized by someone a long time ago, only to be needed precisely when the Council finds out about it, is a really compelling mystery. One that ultimately has an unsatisfying conclusion because I know exactly who organized it, because duh. And the story itself on the surface is really good. It's a compelling story with a few layers, but there's a lot involved there that ultimately undermines it. All things considered, Jango Fett is pretty cool. I mean, cooler than having a reputation built up over 2 movies and then killed in the most unceremonious way possible. At least he was killed by a master swordsman instead of being killed accidentally by a blind guy stabbing his jetpack. He's intimidating and at least feels like a genuine threat that was taken down in a real battle. I love Return of the Jedi, it's my favorite Star Wars movie, but that was a lame death scene. Oh yeah, and Christopher freaking Lee. Just his presence elevates the movie somewhat. Not that much, but somewhat. Though I wish we had known more about Dooku before the movie. We get to hear a lot about him, but just hearing that he was Yoda's Padawan and that he trained Qui-Gon doesn't really mean anything when I've never heard of him before. Why do I care? Star Wars has a habit of tossing in characters and just hoping that they'll release the backstory later. Though that showdown with Dooku at the end is rather impressive, and the fight with Yoda even more so. I have some issues with that fight, but I'll get into it later on. It was awesome to finally see Yoda in action, but I'd have loved it more if they had managed to make the puppet do those acrobatics. Speaking of fight scenes, admittedly, the big battle scene in the arena is glorious. It's one of the high points of the movie, though I'm mad that they wrote out Yaddle and Yarrell Poof before this happened. Could you imagine that? There's also a lot of good planting of seeds for stuff that will become relevant in the next movie. Anakin's scene with his mother and the following massacre, despite Christensen's lack of emoting, still came off as a powerful scene, though mainly because of the emotion given by Pernilla August as Shmi dies. And that first step into the dark side was the first time that I felt like, yeah, this guy could become Darth Vader. And a lot of the acting is really top-notch, and I have to give special note to Ian McDiarmid because he is so sinister in this. And he was that way in Phantom Menace, and it's not until episode 3 that he goes over the top and becomes Emperor Ultimate Power. And of course, Ewan McGregor is fantastic as Obi-Wan. I mean, he's no Alec Guinness, but episode 2 is where he literally and figuratively grew the beard. I mean, pretty much all the major players, save for Christensen, do really good jobs. And the aesthetics of the movie are really damn cool. The planets and the costuming, specifically. Anakin's refugee costume is silly, but Padme's outfits, all of them are really nice. And just looking at all the planets, especially the establishing shots, it's just so visually stunning. Sure, some of them are bad, like Dex Jetzer's Diner, but then we get Naboo and Camino and Geonosis, and it's just so amazing. Michael, I don't really understand the significance of all this. Just say the line. We'll be right back with more of the show after I perform a few scans. And we're back. Everything's working fine. This thing's not even on. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, so let's start small. While I like the aesthetics, I feel like the overuse of CGI in the prequels, all of them, but specifically this movie, makes these films lack the timeless quality that the original and sequel trilogy have. These movies could have only been made in the early 2000s, meanwhile the original and sequel trilogy look and feel timeless. It might also be related to the fact that the original and sequel trilogy have actors that, while well-known, fall into their roles so much that you're not distracted by their presence. Meanwhile, I totally noticed that Mace Windu is Samuel L. Jackson and Dooku is Christopher Lee, and it takes me out because, well, it's Samuel L. Jackson and Christopher Lee. Hayden Christensen is not a bad actor. I mean, Jumper is a good movie, and he's really good in that movie. But the script and direction he's given in this movie just makes him really bad. Jake Lloyd was annoying as Anakin. Christensen is just bland. So bland, and as a result, all the other decent performances really shove it in your face how bland he is. It's like Jerry O'Connell in Season 3 and 4 of Sliders. No emotion. This carries over into my next point, which is...
bantering. I am totally against bantering.
The bantering is so bad. Like, there's a scene during the chase with Zam Wessel. Just listen to the exchange.
What took us so long?
Oh, you know, Master. I couldn't find a speeder that I really liked.
There he is.
With the open cockpit and the right speed capabilities.
With Christensen's lack of emotion, that's just so goddamn boring. Meanwhile, if that was Luke and Han, it'd have been hilarious. Hey kid, what took you so long? Well, you know, it took me a while to find a speeder I really liked. See? Funny. When there's good direction and writing, the actors can take the bantering and make it work. This scene just frames Anakin as a vain asshole. And hey, maybe the scene wasn't supposed to be funny, but it reads as banter. It reads like it was supposed to be a humorous exchange between friends, but it doesn't scan like that. There are a lot of people up in arms about how The Last Jedi was too comedic and how Star Wars shouldn't have jokes in it. After watching this, I'm convinced that those people have only watched the prequels, and yeah, only using those as reference, I'm inclined to agree. Building on that, like I said, there were some good moments of emotion and action, and the story is really good, but the direction and a lot of the writing, especially the dialogue, undermines that. Which is a shame because it's a really decent movie otherwise with a lot of potential. Not remarkable, but not utterly terrible to sit through. And a lot of the dialogue is super expository and forced. Show, don't tell, George. The entire exchange between the Kaminoans and Obi-Wan, really hard to sit through, despite how nice Kamino looks. And it's the same thing for most of the movie, especially anything between Anakin and Padme. I also think that the ending with the secret wedding between Anakin and Padme was stupid. For one thing, I feel like it's unearned. I get that they have to get married and have twins by the end of episode 3 so they can get into the original trilogy, but I don't feel as if their whirlwind romance was really earned over the course of the movie. Maybe if they got married during the Clone Wars on the animated show, it would have made more sense, since they would have had more time to develop the relationship. I know that the animated movie and the subsequent series came out years after episode 2, but you can't just shove in a romantic arc because it has to be there. The pacing has to make sense. They haven't seen each other in a decade, and I don't buy that over the course of, a week, maybe 3 weeks, that they just fall in love and get married like that? I don't buy it. Now that I've done the broad strokes, it's time for some specific issues that I had with it. First off, I don't think we really needed to see Boba Fett's origin story. I mean, it's interesting to give him a backstory, but it doesn't factor into anything. He never gets to take revenge on the man who murdered his father because Palpatine throws him out a window in the next movie. Frankly, all it is one of my major gripes with major franchises. Throwing in what the creative team think are clever nods, but they really just make me want to watch the thing that they're not so cleverly nodding to. So Boba Fett looks like a clone trooper. That's pretty much all the backstory they gave us. That, and it told us where he got his suit. On the same token, did Anakin really need to lose a hand? Yeah, I mean, it's a neat parallel, but it doesn't quite have the same resonance as Luke's hand did. He got his hand chopped off and had a big family secret revealed, told that Ben had lied to him. Anakin's hand was chopped off by Dooku, and that was it. No big event surrounding it. It's like Lucas only did it because that's what he did in Empire. It's the same thing with the entire premise of the Clone Wars. In name, it sounds awesome, which is why it was such a cool line in A New Hope. Makes you wonder what the Clone Wars was. What I imagined it would be was decidedly not this. And like I said, seeing Yoda in action was so cool, and everyone in the film goes on about how Yoda's like the best of the best. But if Yoda was as awesome as everyone says, couldn't he have stopped Dooku and saved Anakin and Obi-Wan? I mean, he's freaking Yoda. He couldn't have just force-tossed Dooku into a wall, throw the pillar away, and save the day? Now for stuff that pissed me off specifically, but it's here at the end because it's not really stuff that I can fix, and some of it was intentional, but I have to mention it. This scene right here.
If an item does not appear in our records, it does not exist.
How freaking arrogant can you get? If the Jedi are so all-knowing and the Republic is so great, how the hell does one guy take you down? Even if you factor in that Anakin and Dooku and the Separatists helped, it was still mostly on Sheev Palpatine. I don't feel so bad that Inspector Gadget threw your ass in jail anymore. By the by, I know that's the point, and that's the idea that they were so arrogant, but I just had to mention it. And the CGI paired dinner sequence. I won't harp on it because everyone already has, but I have to mention it. How did they think that was okay? Why didn't they just use a real pair? Obviously tone down the CGI. The great thing about the sequel trilogy is that they're using practical effects more than CGI. I mean, spoiler alert for The Last Jedi, I'm gonna give you a few seconds to recognize that and skip ahead or pause if you don't want to hear it. They had puppet Yoda, not CGI, puppet. And it looked good. And I know that it was new at the time and was able to create the world that Lucas wanted, but it looks cheap now. If they took the route that the original Jurassic Park had used back in 1993 and used a mix, it would have been better. And maybe they did do a mix at some parts, but I've seen the behind-the-scenes featurettes of all 3 of these, and there is a crap ton of green screen. And of course, it needed better writing and better directing. Lucas is a great ideas guy. He has a lot of awesome ideas and has created characters that have endured over decades. But it's best if he gives those ideas and characters to someone else who knows how to turn it into a good movie. And the fact that he didn't do that for the prequels is really the reason why they're so bad. Hayden Christensen has a reputation, like Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson do from Twilight, of being bland and unemotional. But the reasoning for that is because the script and directing is garbage and give him nothing to work with. The way that the story is structured is horrible, and it needs a lot of reordering and trimming of the fat to make a quality film. Fixing the writing and directing immediately fixes all my issues with the bantering that I really want to like, but the movie makes it so hard to like. Add in the fact that if Christensen was able to emote, then Anakin's first steps to being Vader would have been so much more effective. Then cut the Boba and Jango Fett stuff out. That trims so much and makes the film so much more tighter right off the bat. Put some less expository dialogue in and replace the Jango Fett arc with really developing Anakin and Padme's relationship, making the secret wedding ending earned, and most of the movie actually ends up working. That's the thing about Star Wars. Even if the movie is bad, there are good ideas in there. No Star Wars property is entirely unsalvageable. Not even the holiday special. And tone down the nods to other movies, it just makes me notice how much better written and directed the original trilogy was. Seriously, while I was watching it, I was debating turning it off and putting on Empire just to see a good second entry. Because this movie wants to be Empire so badly, but it doesn't have any of what made Empire great. I mean, it has things that were in Empire, but it doesn't use them the correct way. And if they did, the movie might have been Empire for a new generation. And that was Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Was it good? No. No, it was not. But it could have been. I know that this sort of video is kind of extraneous because everyone else, including Belated Media, have already done the What If the Prequels Were Good video series, and Belated Media's is really good, I do recommend it. But I felt like throwing my hat into the ring. Poor choice of words considering that this is the show that I don't wear a hat for, but still. Do I hate this movie? No. But it's not good, and it's probably the worst of the Star Wars movies. Considering the new movies and this rewatch, I'll probably have to rethink my ranking. I think it's gonna go Last Jedi, Return, Empire, Force Awakens, A New Hope, Rogue One, Revenge, Phantom Menace, and this movie at dead last. The Phantom Menace had a lot of stuff in it that vindicates it from being the worst of the worst. Attack of the Clones, not so much. Going back to that petition, if we're gonna remove any movie from canon, this one might be the best one to remove just because it would resolve all the issues I have with it. But, like I said, the movie had the right ideas, it just didn't know how to execute them properly. Give writing and direction that lets the stellar actors give the stellar performances they're known for, trim the stuff that frankly doesn't need to be there, and you have a movie that might not be the best Star Wars movie, but it's at least a decently developed story. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of how to fix it, you can hit that subscribe button, and if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comment section below. Oh, and if you want to be notified of new uploads, you can hit that bell icon. And if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet. And maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. See you next time. also think that the ending with the secret wedding between Anakin and Padme was stupid. For one thing, I feel like it's unearned. With the secret wedding between... But I don't feel as if their whirlwind... No,